Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Mindset Monday. It's great to be with you. I'm Dr. Trevor. So today we're going to focus on, which I can't believe I haven't done this before. We're going to talk not on Mindset Monday. We're going to talk about the Monday mindset. Makes sense? The Monday mindset. So what are we doing today? We're going to talk about how we start off our week. Like how much of an impact that makes when we can kick off our week with a helpful mindset. Okay, so first thing I want to do is just do like an energy check-in. So like think about this as like our Monday energy check. Okay, so just join me for a moment and just maybe think about this. Like how are you feeling today? Like just if you were to put it in one word, how are you feeling today? Like maybe it's tired, maybe it's motivated, maybe you're overwhelmed, maybe it's neutral, maybe there's some excitement. Like for those of you that work outside the home and maybe you're whether that's in person at an office or maybe you have a virtual job where you jump on calls, do you have those team members at work, those colleagues and coworkers, like it's Monday morning and you're like dragging in with your cup of coffee in one hand, right? And your backpack, your laptop, or whatever it is that you've got for work in the other hand. And you're like, oh, it's Monday. And they greet you at the door, in the lobby, at the desk, wherever it is. And they're like all smiles and they're chipper and they're like roaring to go. All right. Like, you ever wonder what's going on with those people? That they come from a different place. Now, I know some of us are morning people and some of us are not morning people. Right? Like some of us like jump out of bed and we're like, hey, let's go. Right? Others of us drag out of bed. And it takes us time to kind of like warm up to the idea of the day ahead. You know, maybe we've had like a cup of coffee or a gallon of coffee before we've gotten into finally feeling human enough to be able to interact with someone else. Think about that if you're married. And oftentimes in marriages, one member of the spouse is like this eager, ready to go, and the other one is like, don't touch me, leave me alone, and definitely don't talk to me until I've had some time to wake up. Okay, so think about that in the same way that we not just think about our morning and our day, but think about that in the way that we kick off our week. Okay, so I asked everyone like, how you feeling today, and I gave those examples of motivated and overwhelmed and neutral and excited. So here's what I want all of us to do as we step in today's challenge and today's conversation around this mindset shift for Mondays. So the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to, if you're sitting in a chair, I want you to sit up straight. I want you to like put your shoulders back. And I just want you to join me just 3 times. We're going to have 3 breaths. Like breathe in through your nose, out through your mouth. 2 more times. In through your nose, out through your mouth. As you do this, like you can maybe feel it in your diaphragm or your chest, the air, right? One more time. You're breathing in and breathing out. Okay, here we are. It's Monday. And as we talk about our mindset, I want to start with this idea of the shift between control and influence. And this is significant. The mindset shift between control and influence. And if there's one like core message in today, it would be you don't have to be in control of everything. Like you just don't have to be in control of everything. Why is that important? Because many of us start off our week feeling stressed about the things we can't control. But stress often comes from focusing on things that are outside of our power. Right? So if we're stepping into the week and they're like, oh my gosh, I got so much to do and there's so much overwhelm. What if this happens? What if that happens? And I don't know what this is going to take place and how that's going to play out. And we have all of this kind of weightiness, right? We start out the week feeling stressed about we can't control. And then, as I said, but stress often comes from focusing on things outside of our power. So let me give you an example. So, like, we can't control the traffic on the way to work, right? Like, we're not sitting in the cars with other people. We're not sitting behind the wheel. We can't force them to step on the gas and go faster, or go slower, or brake sooner, or get in the slow lane if they're slow, or the fast lane if they're fast, right? Like, that is out of our control. We can't control if there was an accident that happened up above. We can't control if there is construction going on. But here's what we can control. We can control how we respond to traffic on our way to work. Right, like to be like a responsive driver, right? To be able to, when somebody is slow, right, we can respond in a way that's actually helpful and safe, right? When somebody's crazy and out of, like maybe what seems like out of control, right? We can like pull back and we can be safe and let them pass and do whatever it is they're gonna do, right? Let me give you another example. So we can't control our coworkers' mood. Like Monday, again, as I shared that example, you walk into work and some people are chipper and happy and excited and like best day ever, right? And other people are moody and grumpy and they won't make eye contact and they just grunt at you when you come in the door, right? That's out of our control. We can't control people's moods, but we can control our energy and our response to those people, right? Like, if somebody's kind of moody and grumpy and we're like, whoa, we can kind of read the situation and we can kind of respectfully maybe tone it down a little bit if we came in all amped up, right? We can check on them and make sure they're good and okay, offer to support them. If we're coming in kind of moody and tired and exhausted and if somebody else is like, you know, like bright and shiny, right? Like we can, and we're annoyed by their energy, right? We can find ways to like respond with our energy, right? And the way that we interact with them, right, in a way that might be respectful and kind, even if our energy is very different than their energy. Okay, so in the midst of this idea of control versus influence, I want us to just do a quick reflection. And it's a reflection on this. What drains your energy? So think about something that's been frustrating or overwhelming to you lately. Now ask yourself, is that something I can control or is it just something that I can influence? Okay, so as I said, think about something that's been like frustrating and like overwhelming to you lately. And then ask yourself the question, is that something that's within my control, right? Or is that something that I can influence? Okay, so I want to give another few examples of this. So if you were to visualize, like maybe like drawing two columns, like and column number one is this idea of things I can control, right? Column number two, things I can influence, but not control. So here's an example. Things that I can control. Like I can control my thoughts and my actions. Like that's a helpful reminder, right? I'm actually in charge of my thoughts and my actions. But I'm not in charge of other people's reactions or responses. However, that actually is something I can influence, right? Like when I'm kind and gracious, when I'm patient, when I step in with people with empathy and understanding, right? It can absolutely influence the interactions that I get to have with them, the way in which they might respond back to me, right? In the same way, right? If I come in moody and grumpy and judgy and like critical and like short, like in any of those things, it absolutely influences the way I'm going to interact with that person. So again, I can control my thoughts and feelings. I can't control other people's responses, but I can influence their responses, right? In the way that I might interact with them. I'll give you another example. Things that I can control. I can control my daily habits, right? The way that I go about doing what it is that I do. What I can't control necessarily is like the culture at my work, like the corporate culture, But, as I said, with the previous example, I can't control it, but I can absolutely influence it. Right? I can control my daily habits. I can influence the corporate culture. Right? Like somebody who's living out the values and the virtues of the company, somebody who's being honorable and respectful and kind, somebody who is following the proper channels and going through the proper processes, who's somebody who's honoring others in those processes, somebody who's trying to be encouraging and supportive and being a team player every step of the way, right? I can absolutely influence the corporate culture, even if I can't control it. Let me give you one more example. I can control how I handle stress, but I can't always control the outcomes of the situation. Again, I can handle how I deal with stress, but I technically can't control the outcomes of situations, and yet I can have influence. Right? By the way I handle stress, oftentimes I can influence in what happens next. I can influence how it plays out or the outcomes in that situation. Right? With stress, if I'm able to respond to my stress, the thing I'm in control of, right? Like doing like we did earlier, take some deep breaths, like be mindful, be aware of the situation that surrounds me and the people who I'm interacting with. If I can self-regulate, if I can manage my stress in the midst of that, right, I can influence the outcomes. If I'm not doing such a great job at managing my stress, right, and I get moody and grumpy and I place blame and I point fingers and I take it out on other people, well, you know what? That's going to influence outcomes also. So, again, remember those two columns, things I can control and things I can influence. Really important in this idea of a core message. I don't have to control everything, but I can have a significant influence. I can control me and what's going on inside of me, my thoughts and my feelings. I can't control what's happening outside of me, but I can be influential in the process. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is this idea of reframing challenges. Reframing challenges. In fact, one of my favorite frameworks in this direction is the idea of that every obstacle can be seen as an opportunity. Right? Like every challenge, every hardship, everything that's not working and going the way that I think it could, would, or should, somewhere in the midst of that, to be able to see every obstacle actually provides opportunity. So here's the way I want to talk through this. So I want to walk through this idea of like how we can turn every obstacle into an opportunity. So step one, I want you to write down one challenge you've been facing. Maybe it was last week, maybe it's only Monday, but maybe it's already showed up today, or it's something you're going to be facing in the week ahead. And then I want you, so step one, just identify, like write down one challenge that you've been facing. Step two, answer the following 3 reframing questions. Pretty simple, but they're profound, I believe. The first one is, what's within my control? The second one, how can I shift my focus from stress to solutions? And number 3, what's one small step I can take today to influence a better outcome? Okay, what's within my control? How can I shift my focus from stress to solution? And one small step I can take today to influence a better outcome. Okay, let me give you an example of this. Maybe there's a work deadline coming up. Okay, in this work deadline, maybe there's the initial thought. Remember the thought that you might have, like, I have a massive deadline and I feel overwhelmed. That's the initial thought. Okay, but we're going to do some reframing. So here's the reframed thought. I can't change the deadline, but I can control how I manage my time. I can break the project into smaller tasks and set realistic milestones. Okay, did you catch that from the first thought? I have a massive deadline and I feel overwhelmed. to the reframed thought. Like, I can't change the deadline. That's outside of my control. But what I can control, right, is how I manage my time and how I objectively work towards smaller tasks that are going to help me complete the larger project. Okay. So, the last thing I want to talk about is this idea of coming up with an action plan. Okay, so an action plan, like here we are on Monday, so whether it's for today or it's next Monday or any Monday going forward from here, how to move through this mindset shift, how to reframe challenges in this action plan. And it's simply this: setting mental health initiatives. So I want you to think about this. Small, doable steps for the week. Small, doable steps for the week. So now that we've reframed challenges, let's set a game plan, an intention for the week ahead. So what's one small habit we can commit to your mental well-being this week? Why does that matter? I'm going to connect that in just a moment, but just hang with me for a minute. So let's the idea of small, doable steps for the week. What's one small habit you can add or you can adjust in the week ahead for your mental well-being? Let me give you a couple examples I came up with, like taking a 5-minute morning stretch, like after you get up and maybe before you start your workday. Another one, maybe setting a boundary around phone use at night, like when to turn your phone off and when to like actually get ready and go to bed. One we already practiced, taking 3 deep breaths, but in this case, responding to stress. When I feel stressed, I'm going to commit to take these deep breaths. And then here's another one, practicing gratitude by writing down one good thing per day. So again, my prompt to you is, I want you to come up with one small habit that you can commit to do this week ahead. And maybe it was that 5-minute stretch, maybe it was setting a boundary on your phone time, maybe it was taking 3 breaths and respond to stress, maybe it was practicing gratitude by writing it down and keeping a journal for one thing every day that you are thankful for. Okay, so I want you to commit to that. Commit to identify one thing this week. All right, here's a final thought before we wrap up, which is your mental health isn't a one-time fix. Mental health is not a one-time fix. It's a daily practice. Every morning when we wake up, it's a commitment that we make to ourselves and oftentimes to others around us. And so these small changes lead to big results over time. Small changes lead to big results over time. So here's just an encouragement as I want to kind of recap. It's this idea that we have way more power over our mindset than we realize. When we can start to shift our mind, we actually shift everything. So we talked about like here we are on Mindset Monday, and we're talking about the Monday mindset to be able to shift the way that we enter into the day and into the week ahead. And that first recognition of is, hey, we don't have to be in control of everything. And so on Mondays, we're going to wake up and we're going to just take inventory, or we're going to assess, okay, what's in my control and what's out of my control. What's the things I can work on and I can do today, right? Like my thoughts and my actions, my daily habits, the way I interact with other people, and how can I influence? I can influence how I respond to people when I get to work on a Monday. I can respond in ways that are helpful of managing my own stress and anxiety and worry and overwhelmedness into the day ahead or the week ahead. And the way that plays out in my communication or in my interaction with those around me. And then as we just talked about this idea of an action plan, like put in motion and intention Like I would go as far as to say every day have a routine. Like have a rhythm and like kind of a routine. It's really helpful, especially in the mornings, but all throughout the day. Right, when something overwhelming happens, when stress shows up, when there's distance or disconnection with other people, like our ability to step back, take a deep breath, remind ourselves what we're grateful for, go back to that 2-column list of what am I in control of and what can I influence. Okay, even on tough days, like we can control how we show up. That ability to be able to say, hey, I'm going to do the best I can today to show up in the best version of me, even in those tough days and even in those difficult weeks where there's stress and there's overwhelm, right? Take the energy, and as you step into the week, step into it with confidence. Okay, so if you want to take this whole idea further, I want to challenge you with maybe a journal prompt. Journaling is a great way to help us process the past, which is like, hey, well, how did today go, or how has this week been, or how am I doing in the midst of what's happened this week? It's also helpful for us to process what's ahead of us, the future, right? What's coming up and what's going on. In the midst of that, journaling our thoughts, our feelings, and either our behaviors or our anticipated behaviors in the midst of that. And holding that as a part of the reminder, that's what we get to be in charge of. That's what we get to control. Our thoughts, our feelings, and our behaviors. So again, if you want to take it further, journal this question, and I would encourage you to do that later today. How can I influence my week instead of trying to control it? Okay, back from what we talked about earlier. This is a great question. How can I influence my week and what's ahead of me this week rather than try to control it? All right, I hope this was helpful for you today. As you think about waking up tomorrow on a Tuesday and this week ahead, right, interacting with other people, this shift from control to influence, this ability to be able to have a mindset with gratitude, to be able to lean in with intention and have practical steps in place. I'm certain it's going to be helpful for you. So, as we wrap up today, just know that we're going to be back on Wednesday. Dr. Mike's going to be joining us for Wellness Wednesday. I'll be back on Friday for Faithful Friday. Hope you guys have an incredible week. Practice what we learned today. Commit to something, some